Back in 2001, a game came exclusively for the PS2 that didn't just change the action genre, it completely invented a new one. I'm talking about Devil May Cry. It took the slow, clunky gaming landscape of the era and injected it with pure, fast-paced action. The plot is straightforward. You play as Dante, a trash-talking, pizza-eating mercenary who happens to be the half-demon son of a legendary Dark Knight. A mysterious woman named Trish shows up at his shop and recruits him to travel to Mallet Island. The mission is to stop the Emperor of the Underworld from breaking into the human realm. Simple, edgy, and effective. Before this, video game protagonists were mostly stoic soldiers or colourful platforming animals. Dante brought this effortless, anime-inspired cool factor, backed up by Drew Coombs' iconic voice lines.
Whoa, slow down, babe. Well, well, what do we have here? Nature calls? It's in the back.
But what really balances out his loudmouth is the game's deeply unsettling atmosphere. Mallet Island is a masterclass in gothic horror. You're walking through massive, lonely stone castles, eerie gardens, and ambient industrial gothic tech tracks that make the world feel alive. The wildest part of this game is how it was made. It actually started as the original concept for Resident Evil 4, but director Hideki Kamiya made the action so fast and stylized that it strayed way too far from horror. The legendary producer Shinji Mikami, the mastermind behind Resident Evil, spent 3 solid months convincing Capcom to let them spin it off into its own unique game. And developing this on the early PS2 hardware was an absolute nightmare. The console was notoriously difficult to program for. Mikami famously admitted it in an interview. If the programmer is really good, you can achieve high quality, but if they aren't, it's really hard. We literally lost 3 programmers during Devil May Cry, because they couldn't keep up with the complexity. Despite the system's hardware limitations, the team pushed through and squeezed every ounce of power out of that little black box. Because of its roots, the gameplay DNA of Resident Evil is everywhere. You collect red orbs to upgrade your swords and guns, and unlock skills like the high-flying air hike, jump to reach absurd heights. They even kept the item structure. Instead of green herbs, you use green orbs to instantly revive yourself mid-fight, and instead of rocket launchers, you have holy water, which completely obliterates a whole bench of enemies on your screen without you even needing to touch them. It took survival horror mechanics and supercharged them into high-octane combat. But look, we have to be real about the game's biggest flaw, that atrocious camera angle. It used fixed camera angles just like Resident Evil. Now, that worked for survival horror because slow pacing builds tension. But in a lightning-fast character action game, half the time the camera flips mid-combo, and suddenly you can't even see your own character or where the enemy is attacking from. It was incredibly annoying. Despite the camera jank, the game was a massive triumph. It launched to universal acclaim, scoring stellar 9 out of 10s across the board, and going on to sell over 2 million copies worldwide on the PS2 alone. To wrap things up, I want to hear from you guys which boss fight in this game was your absolute favourite? Was it the fiery Spider Phantom, the shape-shifting Nightmare, or the final god-tier showdown against Mundus? Let me know in the comments below. In 2003, Capcom released Devil May Cry 2 exclusively for the PlayStation 2. A corporate businessman named Arius tries to summon a literal demon god for corporate gain, and Dante travels to a remote island to team up with a warrior named Lucia to stop him. That's the plot, that is literally it. But while the story was bare bones, Dante himself changed completely. The loudmouth, pizza-eating, trash-talking teenager was gone from the first game. In this sequel, Dante's personality became significantly more mature, quiet, and noticeably darker. He barely spoke, choosing instead to let his actions do the talking. And let's be honest, his new outfit was absolute fire. The sleek black and red leather coat with the high collar remains one of the best character designs in Devil May Cry history, and I hope you agree with me. But outside of his immaculate wardrobe, this game absolutely sucked, and it all boils down to fundamentally broken gameplay mechanics. Remember the fast pace, adrenaline-fueled, close combat of the original Devil May Cry? In this, the combat felt incredibly slow, heavy, and completely stripped of weight. But the ultimate sin, the thing that completely killed the gameplay experience, was the guns. The pistols were completely broken. You could literally jump into the air, mash a single button to shoot an enemy across the arena, and watch them die without ever putting yourself in danger or exerting a single ounce of effort. It wasn't stylish, it was an incredibly boring chore that completely ruined the hack and slash loop. Then there's the UI. Think back to the original game. Whenever you needed to equip a weapon or consume a green orb, you were greeted by a funky, highly stylized animation that kept the gothic rockstar energy alive. Even if you ignored the gameplay flaws, DMC1's UI was visually stunning. Devil May Cry 2, on the other hand, gave us a UI that literally looked like it was put together by a kid using MS Paint. It was flat, lifeless, and completely stripped of the franchise's signature identity. To be fair, the game wasn't a total disaster. Dante could do wall runs and mid-air backflips in this entry, which felt genuinely cool and fluid for the PS2 era. It added a level of vertical mobility the series desperately needed. But overall, gamers and critics absolutely hated the final product. Yet despite the massive fan backlash, the game was a massive commercial success, moving well over 1.7 million copies worldwide on the back of the first game's legendary hype. The development of this title was notoriously chaotic, with the secret director starting the project and franchise legend Hideaki Itsuno brought in with only 4 months left before release just to stitch the pieces together. Reflecting on the brutal development cycle, Itsuno later stated in an interview, "The one that was the hardest to work on, that took the most effort, that's this one." Ultimately, Devil May Cry 2 served as the ultimate turning point for the entire hack and slash genre. It was a massive wake-up call for Capcom. If they had doubled down on this exact formula, it easily could have led to the permanent end of the Devil May Cry franchise. Instead, the failure forced the developers to look in the mirror, completely reinvent the mechanics, and deliver what many consider the greatest comeback in gaming history, Devil May Cry 3. It's a prequel focused on a massive dysfunctional family feud. Dante's evil twin brother, Virgil, raises a giant demonic tower in the middle of a city to steal their father's devil powers, and Dante has to climb it to kick his absolute ass. But what instantly gripped players was the return of the real Dante. If you played Devil May Cry 2, you know he was strangely quiet, serious, and kind of boring. Devil May Cry 3 throws all of that out the window and brings back the exact same chaotic energy from the original Devil May Cry 1. He's cocky, he says hilariously unhinged, humorous things right in the faces of terrifying bosses, and he balances that pure trash talk with some of the most beautifully choreographed action sequences. Now let's talk mechanics, because this is where the game truly separates itself from its predecessors. Unlike the older games where your moveset was pretty locked in, Devil May Cry 3 introduced 4 distinct, selectable fighting styles: Trickster for dodging, Swordmaster for melee, Gunslinger for firearms, and Royal Guard for perfect parries. The depth of the combos here is insane. You can launch a demon into the air with a high time, jump up with them for an aerial rave sword slash, switch to your dual pistols for a mid-air rainstorm to keep them suspended, and finish it off by slamming down with a helm breaker. It's fluid, expressive, and light years ahead of Devil May Cry 2's slow, uninspired combat. But let's be completely honest about the difficulty level of this original PS2 release. It was brutal. The North American version literally mapped Japan's hard mode as our normal. I lost count of how many times I died trying to clear these boss fights. Cerberus, Agni, and Rudra, absolute nightmares. And back then, if you ran out of yellow orbs, dying meant respawning at the literal starting line of the mission. You had to run through the whole level again. Normally that kind of punishment would make you throw your controller through the wall. But with Devil May Cry 3, it wasn't frustrating. Why? Because the combat mechanics are so incredibly addictive. This is the pure definition of hack and slash that DMC2 completely lacked. With every single respawn, you weren't just wasting time. Your real-world reflexes were improving. You were actively learning how to telegraph attacks, when to jump, and how to fight back. The game was literally forcing you to get good, and that satisfying loop was the entire point of the experience. This relentless but rewarding gameplay is exactly why the critical reception was through the roof. Critics praised it as a massive return to form for Capcom. IGN handed it a stellar 9.6 out of 10, and GameSpot gave it an 8.6, cementing it as one of the peak action titles on the console. Commercially, it was a massive hit too. The original PS2 release sold over 1.3 million copies worldwide, and when you factor in the later special edition release on the console, it cleared well over 2.3 million copies on the PS2 alone. It didn't just save the franchise after a disastrous second game, it defined what a modern character action game should feel like. It's loud, it's punishing, and it's pure, unfiltered 2000s gaming gold. but I want to know your side of the story. For those of you who braved this game back on the PS2, which specific boss fight was the absolute wall that made you die the most? And how did it feel when you finally laid them out? Drop your trauma in the comments, and I'll see you next time.